It's your boy Will Trevino, the legal bandit. Today we'll be hanging with the Honorable George A. Grasso, who left the bench to run for Queens District Attorney and is doing his thing. Come with me to learn more about his story.
Your Honor, how are you today?
Great.
Thank you.
Great to be with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Where's Wilber?
Where's Wilber? Right here.
Oh, there you are.
Exactly. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show. Mm-hmm. We've known each other for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Joe and I went to law school together. I think I met you for the first time when I was like about 19, 20 years old.
Yep.
And so it's a pleasure to see what you're doing, running for Queens DA. He's running for Queens DA, by the way, June 27th and November 7th. Thank you. So, but before we get into that, right, I want to explore a little bit about who is the Honorable George A. Grasso and how you came to be where you are today.
Well, I'll start with, in terms of who I am, the things I'm most proud of. I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a nephew, I'm an uncle.
Oh, you're a lot of things.
And every one of those things are intricately part of who I am as a human being. Mm-hmm. You know, I think some people make a mistake, psychological mistake of identifying themselves by virtue of their profession. Like, I can say that I'm a lawyer, police officer, a judge, first deputy police commissioner. I was all of those things, but those were jobs. Jobs that were very important to me and positions that I'm very proud of. But they're not the essence of who I am. I started with the essence of who I am, and then we take that and we mix in our education, and we do the best we can in life. Yeah.
And so, obviously, family is important to you, right? And Foundational. My question is that something that was taught to you and passed down by your parents and the ancestors before you, or is it something or was it a realization that came later in life on your own or through the guidance of others?
I was very blessed to be born into a family with very loving parents, a wonderful extended family on my mother's side and on my father's side. My grandfather on my father's side, Angelo Grasso, he was born in 1897 in a tiny little speck of the earth known as San Giorgio. He was born into very, very humble means. He was literally born in a cave. The family has a house that they subsequently built out on the side of a mountain where the family cave was. And what happened was, in the town, which is by American standards small, but by Southern Italian standards a decent sized town, is a town called Melfi, maybe 15, 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And in the latter part of the 19th century, there was a major earthquake in Melfi. And my grandfather's family, his name is Angelo Grasso, whatever home they had was destroyed in the earthquake.
Wow.
So this being southern Italy in the 1890s, a family of a very humble means who was now basically reduced to a family of almost no means.
Yeah.
People there was no FEMA, there was no government program. It's like you lived or died. You found out how to. So people migrated. That's what he was born into.
Yeah, it doesn't get more humble than that.
Doesn't get more humble than that. I grew up in a humble home, two-bedroom home in Valley Stream, right by the border of Queens, near Hook Creek Boulevard. My father was a full-time printer. My mother was they used to, now the term housewife is called derogatory. My mother was proud to be a housewife. Okay. She was a proud housewife. She was mother of her children and was always there for us, took care of us, kept an eye on us, made sure we were doing our homework, we were doing the right thing.
Talk about humble beginnings, right? From like the cave story, right? To now you running as being the chief law enforcement officer of the county, right? And you've held other notable positions of society, right? You've been a judge, first deputy of the NYPD, went to law school, right? So those are very, like, that's a big leap. And so you've been able to do that all successfully, but like you said, it hasn't always been a straight line.
So, I thought I was a bit of a tough guy, and my friends and I were more like wise guys than good students, And I never had a love for like math and science, although I always instinctively liked history and social studies and things of that nature, But, I underperformed for several years, notwithstanding admonitions. My father would always tell me, as a kid, you want to make something in your life, you're going to have to go to college. You have to make something, you have to do that. And he said college, and at the time he said college is expensive. He would say it would cost you like $5,000 a year. He says, and I don't have the money. Don't think I'm paying your tuition. You're going to have to get a scholarship. You're going to have to work. He would tell me these things as a kid. And I would think, like, well, how is that all going to work? Meanwhile, I'm like doing the opposite in high school. So when I'm in 11th grade, I guess mid-year in 11th grade, when guidance counselors had a responsibility to sit down with students and talk about college options. In my case, they required my father to take time off from work during the day, like say 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, for a meeting with my guidance counselor. And so we went to the meeting with the guidance counselor, me and my dad and this particular guidance counselor. And he starts off, it was a very, very glum kind of a meeting. And he starts off by talking about different aptitude tests, that I had a certain aptitude which was above average, but my grades were consistently below average. It was a little embarrassing, and I'm wondering, what kind of feedback I'm going to get from him. And we're walking down an empty hall towards the main part of the building where he's going to leave and get to the parking lot and go to work. And so we stop off at my locker to say goodbye, and meanwhile he hasn't said a word, and I have to open my locker to get my books for the next class. He just looks at me, and he said, "George, I'm glad I'm not you." And I looked back at him like I gave him like a "what do you mean" kind of look, and he said, "Well, I always thought, you had, academic capacity. You had the capacity to do something in school and go to college and make something yourself. But obviously, you're not doing that." He goes, "I don't know what you're going to do. I'll tell you this, though. I'm glad I'm not you." And he just left. That's it. That's it. That's it. No, just left. And there I was, standing in front of my locker, thinking about that. Thinking, he's absolutely right. And I always wanted to be a lawyer. I can sit here and say, all these years later, at 65 years old, I'm still an idealist. I'm still an idealist at heart. I really want to do the right thing for the right reasons. I am not intimidated. When I think a cause is right and a fight is right, I will fight that fight, and I will stand up for that cause. Whether it was a bully in the schoolyard when I was 8 or 9 or 10 or 15 years old, or whether I'm a 65-year-old man who thinks that some cynical political forces are making everyone in our city less safe. In 1986, we had about 16 police officers indicted in New York City police officers. The scandal was known as the Buddy Boys scandal. It was out of the 7-7 precinct. Police officers, drugs, guns, money, thefts, robberies and burglaries by on-duty police. And I was assigned, along with someone named John Walsh, who was a captain. Walsh had me as his assistant, and we reported to the first Deputy Police Commissioner, Dick Condon, and the Police Commissioner, Ben Ward. over a period of a couple of years, we had dozens and dozens of officers who were found to be implicated in those scandals, fired or resigned from the NYPD. We weren't going to sit back and wait years for the criminal justice system to work out criminally, or wait to see if only the indicted or, because sometimes the system of law that's required, the level of proof that's required to convict someone criminally, it's less administratively. And we wanted to make sure any police officer who tarnished the shield and violated his or her, there was some women involved in that too, that they would be removed from the police department. I've had one consistent aspect of my professional reputation from the early 80s until now. Get it done, George. I've always been seen as the get it done. You want something done? Find George Grasso. He'll find a way to get things. So that was my reputation. So I became a judge in the criminal court in January of 2010. I felt like I was a rookie again at 52 years old. I embraced it. I totally embraced it. And you never know, I had no master plan about how all this was going to work. But as it turned out, there was a crisis in arraignments in the criminal courts in New York City. The court system and the criminal justice system couldn't get its act together with arrest to arraignment times, meaning from the time someone is arrested until the time someone gets in front of a judge and is arraigned. There was a case, Court of Appeals case going back to 1991 called the Roundtree case, where the Court of Appeals said this must be done within 24 hours. Well, the reality was when I walked in the door at Skimmerhorn Street in Brooklyn, it was 30 hours, 32 hours, and the same in the Bronx. Within about 8 or 9 months, I had the time down 10 hours. 10 hours. We got the time down under 20 hours. And you know how I did it? I just brought the stakeholders around the table. I brought in the police department. I brought in the defense. I brought in the DAs. I brought in the court officers. And I had the job. My first major meeting, right? So I had the whole team around the table. And at this time, we're at like 31 hours. Now, who's this Grasso guy, from the police department? He's got this thing. And I listened to this one, I listened to that one. At the end of the first meeting, that's what I said to everybody. So we're gonna fix this. We're gonna figure out the problem, and we're gonna fix this. And everybody around this table, whatever entity or agency you're from, you've got an important part of it. And I want you to know, as long as I'm running this, you have access to me. Whether you want to speak to me publicly at the meeting, you want to grab me privately, I will be available and I'll be interested. But there's one caveat I'm going to tell you right now. If the only thing you're going to want to do is tell me what everybody else is doing wrong, and you don't want to take any responsibility, don't even bother talking to me, because I'm not going to want to listen. Is that clear? Boom. I said, I don't play the blame game. I don't do circular firing squads. Everybody's right and everybody's dead. That's my definition of a circular firing squad. And you know what? They got it. And we fixed it. So then I went on from there, and they made me in 2016 the supervising judge in Bronx Criminal Court. Yet another crisis. Here's how I get my jobs. We had based on crisis. But you know what? I like it. Yeah. I don't like the fact that we have crises, but I like the fact that I can fix things. So the new chief judge in January 16, Janet DeFiore, she was hit with a class action lawsuit out of Bronx Criminal Court, where we had over 1,000 cases, misdemeanor cases that were over a year old. She made me the supervising judge to get in there and fix it. And I'm proud to say, in a matter of a few months, we had that down by several hundred cases. And by the time the pandemic hit, hard in March 20. We had been from well over 1,000 cases over a year old to well under 200 cases over a year old. And I was able to do that. But the thing I'm most proud of in Bronx criminal court, and frankly in my entire career as a judge, notwithstanding that, as well as creating a youth programs such as Project Reset and DATY in King's Criminal Court while I was still in charge of arraignments, where we took 16 and 17-year-olds who were charged with various crimes, and we created programming for them based on consequential decision-making and self-esteem, and we dismissed and sealed their cases, and in some cases even had their arrests voided, which is something that was well recognized. As a nice New York Times article focusing on what we did there. But I created a court in the Bronx called OR, the Overdose Avoidance and Recovery Court. And that's designed for people who we assessed, working again with the stakeholders, as I described earlier, assessed at arraignments when they got arrested for low-level drug dealing, for thefts, for trespasses, for things of that nature. If they were assessed to possibly having serious substance use disorder, usually involving opioids, they would be sent to my court. And I would work with a tremendous team of social service workers. It's an organization called Bronx Community Solutions. They were integral to what we did, and they had connections to all kinds of programs, whether they were inpatient programs, outpatient programs, and working with the defendant and the defendant's attorney, I would state on the record in court, look, here's what we're going to do. You could face going to Rikers Island, you could face jail, or you could agree to cooperate with the services that we can provide you, which will likely save your life. Come to court when you're supposed to come to court, and stop getting rearrested. And here's my end of the deal. 1, we save your life, and 2, we dismiss your case. That's called the OR court. It was amazingly successful. We saved dozens of lives. It was widely reported at the time. The Daily News did a big spread on it. I was asked to implement it citywide. Then I was sent, in 2021, I was made the administrative judge in Queens County Supreme Court criminal term. We had thousands of open gun cases throughout the city. I was put in charge of resolving these cases and dealing with this backlog citywide, with working with the criminal court supervising judges, with the Supreme Court administrative judges. In the context of a year, we reduced that backlog by well over 1,000. And that's taking into consideration the new cases that were coming in. I also found time to create yet another diversion part for young people. We called it QDP, the Queens Diversion Part, for 18 to 24-year-olds arrested for top count C felony gun possession cases. Could destroy their lives, could give them jail, give them a violent felony record. Again, working with the stakeholders, getting everyone around the table. We brought in a major service provider and we gave them a deal. They'd have to plea up front to the felony, but also to an underlying misdemeanor. They'd have to cooperate with services. They'd have to go to school. They'd have to keep their job, and they'd have to come to court and avoid rearrest and avoid gang affiliation. And then they would lose the felony, no felony conviction, and possibly even lose the misdemeanor. I created that in Queens Supreme Court. These are some of the things that I'm most proud of before I decided that I had to move on for reasons that we could discuss later when I left on August 31st to run for DA, district attorney, because of my concern with the bail laws and with the lack of accountability in our court system and a total lack of focus on public safety. And I knew if I remained a judge, notwithstanding how successful I had been and how meaningful so many of my programs were, I couldn't even really discuss why I thought public safety was being undermined, leave alone do anything about it. Thanks for watching, everyone. For more information on me and my campaign, you can find us at grassoforqueens.com and at Grasso for Queens on social media. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
So now you know, Queens DA is up for election June 27th, and then general election will be on November 7th. You have the Honorable George A. Grasso. You've heard him here first. For more information, you know where to go. He's an upstanding man. He's an upstanding citizen. I can say that for myself out of all the many years that I've known him and his family. And so at the end of the day, the information is here for you to make an informed decision, and you already know what to do. Go out and vote June 27th and November 7th. Peace and love.